Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I've really been wanting to do the book recommendation tag. So I believe that this particular book tag was created by Steph Borar, but I found it on Sarah Caroli's page. And I wanted to give it a go, so let's see. Okay, so there are 15 prompts, and for each one I will give a book recommendation or tell about a book that fits that prompt, and just give a brief description. So let's try it. I should mention that I am a Kindle girly. I read on my Kindle. So I don't have a whole lot of physical copies of books. I like physical copies of books, but I don't have a lot of storage space, and the Kindle just works for me. So if I don't have the copy of the book, I will put a little picture of it up here for you. Okay, so the first prompt is a book you tell people is your favorite. Favorite is hard. This is certainly one of my favorites, and that is Life's That Way by Jim Beaver. This is my autographed edition, as you can see there. Life's That Way is a memoir comprised entirely from emails that Jim Beaver sent out over a year of his life. These emails were updates to friends, family, and a larger group of supporters, updating them on his wife's health because his wife had been diagnosed with cancer. And so the emails are nightly updates about what's going on in his world with things with his wife. So because of this, the book is told entirely almost like present tense because each day you're just getting the updates from the last day with no clue what's going to happen in the future. Okay, the writing in this, it is incredible. Of all authors, screenwriters, anything I've ever read, in my entire life, Jim Beaver is the top 3, which, that's remarkable in itself, but he wrote these at a time in his life that was, his life was falling apart. He was going through this horrible ordeal, and so it's just mind-boggling to me that he was able to compose these beautifully eloquent, well-written thoughts about the situation and about life during this horrible time. I think what solidifies this for me is how candid he is. He is transparent about his feelings, about his thoughts, and I don't know that I've ever been as open and honest with anyone as Jim Beaver has managed to be with the entire world. So it's something else. It's a story of determination and hope and loss, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. But you need to read it. It'll make you a better person. Okay, so number 2 on the list is a book that is your guilty pleasure. So for this one, I'm going to choose the Carry On series by Rainbow Rowell, particularly book 1, Carry On. Carry On is a magical LGBTQ enemies to lovers slow burn that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a damn good time. So, Carry On follows the story of Simon Snow. He is a very powerful magician who struggles to control his powers. He goes to the Watford School of Magic, and he's widely considered the chosen one. Simon and his best friend Penny are constantly finding themselves in predicaments as they defend Watford from their this unknown menacing nemesis that they have known as the insidious Humdrum. So as the chosen one, Simon Snow has he meets everything on the chosen one checklist. He has the cool best friend that's really good at magic. He has the girlfriend that's golden and everyone adores. He has a mentor that's literally called the Mage, who is sort of manipulating him in a way, but also training him. And he even has a arch nemesis, and that happens to be his roommate, Baz. So when Simon and his arch nemesis Baz are forced to team up, they discover that a lot of the friction between them might have actually been passion. So Carry On is like a light, fun book. It almost has like a tendency to wink at the reader. All the tropes are there. It's a good time. Okay, number 3. A book everyone loved, but you didn't. Have a seat. This may come as a shock. I'm just gonna say it. I didn't like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, I feel like everyone knows about Lord of the Rings. I don't need to include a summary. And I know I'm a horrible human for not liking it. Okay? You can hate me. It was not for me. I didn't connect to the story. I didn't connect to the characters. I didn't connect to the writing. I didn't connect to the plot. I was miserable reading this book. Like, I was miserable. I read the whole trilogy. It was not a fun time for me. Oh my gosh, like, I was tired from the walking. Like, they walked so much. I mean, I know they're on a quest. But could, like, they do anything else? Like, anything. Just walk. It wasn't for me. I'm sorry. It wasn't for me. Okay, number 4, a book you read the fastest. Verity by Colleen Hoover. I read it in like half a day. I could not put it down. And even after I finished, it was in my noggin nonstop because it creeped me out. I mean, for this one, you may want to check the trigger warnings. So, Verity is about a struggling author named Lowen who is given this amazing opportunity to finish the series started by author Verity Crawford, who for some reason is unable to finish her own series. And Lowen is recruited by Verity's husband Jeremy and invited to come back to their place and stay while she looks through all Verity's notes and like gets a grasp on the series so she can finish it. So she goes to this house where Verity and her husband live. And she has like so many questions, like what happened with this tragedy with their family, what happened with Verity, what's going on with her, why can't she finish her own series? And so she starts like going through the notes and like going through Verity's things and figuring stuff out. But the more like information she gathers, the more questions she has. So this book is like a mind-jacking, like a carjacking, but for your mind. It's a thriller that keeps you guessing. I found it incredibly disturbing, but I highly recommend it. It's brilliant. Okay, so number 5 is a book that deserves more hype. And I actually have 2 for this one. They're both YA. The first one is another Colleen Hoover book. And obviously, Colleen Hoover books usually do get a lot of hype. But for me, this one just seems to fly under the radar. I don't hear people talking about it a lot. And I don't know why, because it's my favorite Colleen Hoover book. And that is Heartbones. Heartbones is about Bea. She is a tough young woman who has had a very hard life. And she really is just looking forward to the end of summer when her college scholarship starts and she can get away from like everything bad that's happened to her. Unfortunately, she's got a couple months to go when her mom unexpectedly passes away. And so she reluctantly goes to stay with her father and his new family on the coast of Texas. So she's staying in Texas for the summer, and she's thrust into this whole new world with freedoms and experiences she's never had before. She starts to open up and have fun. Bea is introduced to this guy named Samson, who is rich. His family owns all these properties. He manages the properties. And so initially she's just like, how could someone from this completely different world like get me at all? Like, she basically writes him off as just being a rich jerk. But as time goes on, they begin to kind of develop a bond, and they kind of learn what makes each other tick. I love so many things about this book. First of all, the vibes are summer, just like, it's like the perfect summer read. The characters, Bea and Samson both, are very guarded people. And so they're trying to get to know each other, but it's a struggle. And so for me as a reader, every piece of like information or reveal about their character, it's just like a small victory and like, oh, I learned something about them, you know? And so I was really invested because it was so hard to like, everything wasn't given out right, you know, you had to like earn it a little bit. And I like that. Heartbones is beautifully done. It's suspenseful, it's romantic, it is heartbreaking, and I love it. Okay, for my second book in the same category of a book that I think deserves more hype. Well, first of all, I think it's important to note that hype doesn't always mean like critically acclaimed or exceptionally well written. Hype can mean that it's thought provoking or it sparks conversation or there's something there, you know, whatever for whatever reason. And so to me this is a book, it's an older book. I think it was written in 97. But the fact that it was not talked about constantly and that it's still not talked about constantly is kind of confusing to me because it's just, I think there's so much to discuss. I think there's so much to discuss. Tenderness by Robert Cormier. It might be, I don't know if it's Cormier or Cormier. I've heard it pronounced both ways. But Tenderness is it's a novel that stuck with me. And the first time I read it was, God, I'm old. The first time I read it was like 20 years ago, and it is still on my mind. So I mean, I think that says something. I will note it has some disturbing themes. You may want to check trigger warnings. So, Tenderness brings up topics about humanity and what makes a person good or bad, obsession, the dangers of temptation and of this world, and how our decisions impact our fate. The book is about a girl named Lori. She's 15 years old and she's a bit troubled. She develops these like obsessions or fixations where she has to follow through with them, and they're not usually safe. So, unfortunately, her latest obsession is with Eric Pohl, the teenage serial killer that has just been released from juvie. It's a book about a sociopath and a vulnerable woman and a detective who is trying to pump the brakes on things before anyone else dies. It's twisted, it's disturbing, it's unexpected. Every time you think you know where the story's going, it goes somewhere else. And the ending is just mind blowing. Okay, number 6. A book being developed into a movie or TV show. So the movie version of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes comes out on November 17th of this year, 2023. So if you don't know, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the prequel to The Hunger Games. It follows Coriolanus Snow, who is in The Hunger Games, he's the president, but it follows him when he's a teenager. So in this book, Coriolanus Snow he's desperately trying to find a better future for his family because they are struggling. And so he is given the opportunity to be a mentor in the Hunger Games, and basically his whole existence revolves around the success of his tribute. And so his tribute is a young woman selected from District 12 named Lucy Gray. So Lucy Gray, it turns out, is very charismatic and a little eccentric, and so Coriolanus is tasked with presenting her and her virtues to the country. So in the process of promoting her, Coriolanus begins to be enamored with her as well. I think this book gets kind of criticism because fans of the Hunger Games are used to reading about a hero. And this is something else. Coriolanus is morally gray. And so you're reading about someone that you're not sure how you feel about. Like, you're rooting for him, and yet, you don't know. But for me, I loved it. I liked that I was reading about someone that I wasn't sure if I liked him. And at times I did not like him, and I thought, what is he doing? I was repeatedly surprised by what was going on in the book, by the course of events, the path that the story had taken. The story is really well done. The characters are rich and complex. I was repeatedly surprised reading this book. I loved it. I recommend it. You should read it. Number 7, a book you reread the most. I'm an avid rereader. To me, there's nothing that gives you that same feeling as curling up with a book that you know, and it's familiar to you, and it's comforting. So yeah, I like to reread. So picking a book that I reread the most is kind of hard, but this one comes up regularly. I usually read it, at least I read it every February, and that is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. You're going to want to check trigger warnings, and I will say that this book got some negative feedback from the disabled community, and their feelings were obviously valid. So keep that in mind. But I do think it is a book worth mentioning. So if you know what Me Before You is about, you may feel like it's a strange choice, but this is my Valentine's Day book. This is the book I break out for the day of love, because the love story in this book, it's after my own heart. Top notch. It is there. It's a heartbreaking story. This is a sad book. But the love, oh my gosh, the love. Something else. Me Before You is the story of Louisa Clark. She's in her mid-20s. She's very, bright and bubbly and quirky. And she's just lost her job. And she has no experience as a caregiver, but she's hired to be the caregiver for a quadriplegic man. So the man that she is going to work with and for is named Will Trainer, and Will is initially a jerk to her. He's dealing with some of his own stuff, but he's ill-tempered, and he's surly, and he's sarcastic, and he just kind of gripes about everything she does. So initially she does not like working there, and she's miserable. But as time passes, Will and Lou, they start to bond, and they become friends. They grow to genuinely care about each other. And then Lou finds out that Will and his family have this secret, and it changes everything. It changes how she feels about the job. It changes how she feels about the situation. I mean, everything. It's a big deal. And so from that point on, the story is about Lou and her determination to try to make things better. This is a hard book to describe without spoilers. But so she's trying to fix things and help, and in the process she kind of falls for Will, hard. And the feelings are mutual, and it's just this, the slow burn is just, whoa, it's just something. Me Before You is a heart-wrenching story. It's about love and loss and hope. It's about finding yourself and living your life to the fullest. It's about fighting for the people you love and standing up for what you believe in. It's a good book. It's a good book. Okay, so number 8 is a book from a genre you don't usually read. I like poetry. I like to write poetry. I self-published a book of poems. but I don't really read poetry a lot. However, Some Things I Still Can't Tell You by Misha Collins is a book of poems. I love it. I love it. Misha Collins' poems, they run the gamut from funny to moving. Some of them are, you know, commentary about life. The writing is lovely. And the audiobook for this is narrated by Misha Collins himself. And it is just, like, comforting to listen to. It's definitely worth the read. Okay, so number 9, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. And it's another Coho. So, November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I went into it with high expectations. And I was not disappointed. November 9 is full of romance and longing. It's layered, it's unexpected. So there was one point when I was reading it, when I read a sentence and, like, I gasped out loud. Because it's incredibly well paced, and it left me wanting more right up into the last page. So November 9 is about Fallon. She's 18, and she meets this guy Ben for the first time, and they, like, immediately hit it off. But, like, she's moving across the country. Their lives are, like, headed in different directions. And so they make this pact that once a year they're going to meet up and reconnect. But the catch is that the whole rest of the year, they have no contact. They're not allowed to, nothing, no contact. So they go forward, only meeting up once a year. While they are separated, the feelings and the affection they have for each other is just, like, growing. And they're, like, both longing and anticipating the one day a year when they can reconnect. But as much as they feel for each other, their lives just, things are not in sync. So it's never the right time for both of them at the same time. And so as the reader, you're just like, but guys, come on. Can their love overcome the obstacles in their way, or will life continue to keep them apart? It's a good book. Number 10, a book you usually recommend when asked for a recommendation. Untamed by Glennon Doyle. It's a memoir. Glennon Doyle was, like, the poster child for a Christian marriage. She was a successful author and public speaker, and she had, like, branded herself on being this wife who had overcome adversity and fought for her marriage. And then she fell in love with a woman. So in Untamed, Glennon Doyle unpacks a lot of things. She has commentary on everything from race relations to the hardships that young women face in our society. Obviously, like, staying true to yourself, finding true love. But also, like, there's this narrative on listening to basically people who are highly sensitive and their intuition that is just, like, beautifully done. There's so many things, there's so many topics that are just like, yeah, she gets it. And it's a good book. I read it because my favorite artist, she was just in love with it. So I picked it up and I read it, and then I immediately recommended it to everyone, including my therapist. And my therapist read it and annotated it and recommends it to her other patients now. So yeah, Untamed is beautiful, powerful, gripping. It's full of hope and passion. It'll change your life and stick with you forever. Number 11, a book that has your favorite characters. When I was in the 5th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Mole, recommended a book to me, and she said, I think you will like this. So I finished reading it on January 30th, 1999, and I know the exact date because that is the impact it has had on me. There was life before this book, and there was life after this book. So, The Outsiders was published in the mid 60s, and it was one of the first YA books. YA was not really a genre that was being written for at the time. It was written by an author who was a teenager herself, S.E. Hinton. So, The Outsiders follows a gang of teenage boys who are dealing with socioeconomical tension and inequality in Tulsa in the 1960s. 14-year-old Pony Boy is an orphan who is being raised by his brothers, and they are considered greasers, which is like the poor working class of the society. They're used to hardship and struggle and violence. But one night, things are taken too far, and it sets in place a chain of events that changes everyone's lives. So every single character in this book feels fleshed out and real, and I just keep them in my heart. Number 12, a book you wish you could live in. There's only one answer to this question for me, but there's a problem. Okay, I don't believe in cancel culture. I think it causes more harm than good. But I want to just say, I am so disappointed in J.K. Rowling. The rights of trans people are very important to me, and I stand with the trans community. I think J.K. Rowling, she just sucks, man. What is her problem? Anyway, putting the author aside, a book I wish I could live in is Harry Potter. If I had to pick one book from the series, it would be The Prisoner of Azkaban. But the entire series is it's just a world that I could get lost in. So, you probably know what Harry Potter's about, but just in case, it's the story of a boy who discovers he's a wizard and his subsequent adventures in the wizarding world. When it comes to world building, Harry Potter is unmatched. There is a reason that millennials are comprised of a generation of people that are constantly looking for that Hogwarts letter. Hogwarts feels like a real place that readers have spent years of their life exploring. And Quidditch feels like a real sport that readers are just waiting for their chance to play. I mean, when I think of Hogwarts, I can picture it. I can feel it. It's tangible to me. And the same goes for the Burrow or Hogsmeade. It feels real. I started reading Harry Potter when I was 12, and it changed my life. It's stuck with me all this time. I mean, I feel like Professor Trelawney, Hogwarts is my home. Okay, number 13, a book you thought you would hate but ended up loving. So, several years ago, I was on this, mission to read acclaimed books, or books by authors that I had heard of, but they were out of my comfort zone. So I read classics, and I read modern works that I just normally wouldn't turn to. And so during that phase, I wanted to read Stephen King, but I'm not a horror person, usually not. And so I was wary about reading his works. So I picked up Different Seasons, which technically is not a horror. It's comprised of 4 novellas, and each one is a different story. The Apt Pupil, The Breathing Method, The Body, and Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. So obviously, at least 3 of those books have been turned into movies at this point, that I know of. If you don't know, the movie Stand By Me is it was derived from the book The Body, and obviously The Shawshank Redemption is from Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and I think there was a movie called The Apt Pupil, but I haven't actually seen that one. So I went into it not really knowing what to expect, but I didn't think I was going to like it. But I was pleasantly surprised. The stories sometimes were disturbing, but I was invested. I was invested in the plot. The writing was unique and well done, and it was just a quality read. Number 14, a book that made you cry. Family Don't End with Blood is a collection of stories from the Supernatural fandom, the TV show Supernatural. It's stories from the cast, stories from crew, and from fans. It's, everyone's take on the show Supernatural and the impact it had on them. A bit of a niche read, but Family Don't End with Blood is a beautiful look at fandom. So the book was put together and edited by author Lynn Zubernis, but each chapter is the story from a different person. There were quite a few chapters that made me tear up, made me cry. I mean, it's a moving book. But Jared Padalecki's chapter, I might cry just thinking about it. I'm a huge fan of Jared Padalecki. If you don't know, he played Sam Winchester on Supernatural. He now plays Walker Texas Ranger on Walker. I'm a fan. And his Always Keep Fighting mental health campaign was life-changing for me. So I invested in his story. But reading it was devastating. I mean, the subject matter was it hit so close to home. Horribly familiar. It crushed me. And yet, I felt so seen reading it. I mean, I absolutely bawled my eyes out. Alright, last one, number 15. A book you wish you could read again for the first time. Okay, so a little backstory. I'm a writer. I've self-published some stuff, but my level of confidence in my writing, I mean, it's between proud and cocky. I'm good. But when I read this book, it made me drunk. Like, not the good drunk, but like sad drunk. Because I was like dazed, because I just kept thinking, I mean, I could hone my writing for the rest of my life, and I will never create something of this magnitude. Like, the quality, it was perfect. Like, perfection. And that book is A Prayer for Owen Meany by John Irving. The writing is phenomenal. The story is so, like, intricately well done and just pieced together. The book is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. So, A Prayer for Owen Meany is about two childhood friends, John and Owen, and they share in each other's lives, each other's victories and disappointments and loss. And, they grow up together. It's clear early on that Owen is a very special person. But it's not until they reach adulthood that John kind of realizes Owen's full value, not just to him personally, but to the world. It's a sad book. A Prayer for Owen Meany is moving, it's heartbreaking. Man, is it good. And that's it. So, thank you for watching. Do you like any of these books? Do you hate any of these books? I'd love to hear your opinions. If you want to like and subscribe, please do. But if you don't want to, that's fine. I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day. I am recording. It's